Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. They say that in the Imperium of Man, ignorance is not just a survival trait, it is a requirement. The less you know, the longer you live. But some know too much. A whispered word overheard in the wrong sector, a glance at a forbidden tome, a flicker of uncontrolled psychic power, or even the crime of being adjacent to the wrong person at the wrong time. Then one day, that person is gone. No records, no trial, no memorial, just vanished. And the galaxy keeps turning. It is the hand of the Inquisition that reaches out and seizes them, cloaked in secrecy, justified by necessity. The Inquisition does not answer to governors or generals, not even to the High Lords in practice. They are empowered to act absolutely for the survival of mankind, and that survival, they believe, demands ruthless silence. Those who disappear do so not because they are necessarily guilty, but because they are inconvenient, dangerous, tainted, potentially compromised, or sometimes simply unlucky. Now we walk into the dark, into the forgotten corridors of fortress prisons that do not officially exist, into the null voids and psychic oubliettes where the screams do not echo. This is the story of those who vanish forever, and the horrific sanctuaries where the Inquisition keeps its most precious secrets, its prisoners. There is no courtroom in the Imperium for those whom the Inquisition targets. No advocates, no appeals, no chance to speak on one's own behalf. When the Inquisition acts, it does so outside the mechanisms of imperial law. In many cases, the Inquisition is the law. A rosette, a whispered word, and a dossier marked suspicion of contamination is all it takes. The individual is seized, sometimes publicly as a warning, more often silently in the night. The reasons are rarely explained. The accusations are never shared. For the one taken, reality collapses into silence, metal restraints, and the hum of a ship bound for somewhere unmarked on any star chart. This legal black hole into which people vanish isn't a side effect. It is the intended design. Inquisitors cannot afford transparency. To expose the evidence would be to risk exposing the very threats they seek to contain: demonic whispers, Xenos infiltration, heretical contagions. Their logic is pitiless but absolute. If even one life must be unjustly destroyed to protect 10 billion, then it is not a tragedy, but a necessity. In this brutal calculus, the question of guilt becomes irrelevant. Risk alone is guilt enough. Proximity to corruption is often treated the same as corruption itself. The Inquisition operates under the assumption that the truth is too dangerous for the masses to comprehend. It is a foundational belief, carved into their doctrines, that open discourse or fair trials can only lead to wider contamination. The darkness must be quarantined, and sometimes the infected do not even know they carry the taint. There are countless cases where scholars, remembrancers, or even low-ranking administratum scribes have vanished after stumbling across redacted data or misfiled reports. Their minds were clean, their intentions were innocent, but their knowledge was not. Sometimes it isn't individuals, but entire groups. Research teams, rogue trader entourages, guard regiments, that even ecclesiarchal pilgrim convoys, all gone. All rendered unpersons in the imperial record. The scale of it is staggering, and the silence that follows is deafening. Those left behind know better than to ask questions. Grief gives way to survival instinct. In a galaxy of endless threats, mourning can be fatal. The idea of justice has no place here. Justice implies a balance, a weighing of acts, a consequence fitting a crime. But the Inquisition sees crimes not as past actions to be judged, but as future dangers to be prevented. It is a temporal inversion of morality, no longer about what has been done, but about what might occur if the subject is allowed to continue existing. And that terrifying premise is what justifies the snatching of people from the heart of their lives, never to be seen again. One of the more chilling aspects of this process is its bureaucratic smoothness. It is not a mad rush or chaotic purge. It is precise, measured, entirely methodical. Inquisitors deploy scribes, data writes, and servo-adepts to alter or delete records. Birth documents are removed, transfer orders are forged. Familial connections are severed by decree. A mother, a husband, a squad mate, they are erased not just from life, but from the data net of the Imperium itself. It is as if they never were. The living are gaslit into forgetfulness by the sheer magnitude of the system's compliance. And then there are the exterminatus class disappearances. A sector governor speaks too freely, a cardinal grows curious about forbidden texts, A Forge world dabbles in Xenos salvage without clearance, and the Inquisition doesn't just remove a person. It sterilizes a population. The legal black hole becomes a literal one, consuming entire cities or worlds. In such moments, we glimpse the horrifying scale of what no trial, no mercy truly means. For those taken, the destination is unknowable. For those left behind, the absence is a wound that cannot be closed. And for the Inquisition, the process is simply another day's work. There is no justice in their prisons, only necessity. Some prisons are built to be seen. Their towering walls and spiked parapets serve as grim reminders of imperial law, casting long shadows over hive cities and penal worlds. But the prisons of the Inquisition are built to be forgotten. These are not facilities marked on star charts or mentioned in records. They are not governed by arbites or patrolled by PDF. They are invisible fortresses, dead moons hollowed out and reinforced, derelict void ships tethered in null space, ancient Xenos ruins repurposed and sealed by warded ferrocrete. They are prisons in name only. More accurately, they are tombs without corpses. These facilities do not need names. They are often identified only by obscure ciphers or outdated stellar coordinates, details known only to the Inquisitors who built them, and the rare few trusted to maintain them. Some are watched over by deathly silent servitor guardians. Others are governed by a single seneschal who has gone decades without speaking to another living soul. Every element of their existence is designed for maximum secrecy. They are built not to intimidate, but to vanish from thought. The architecture of these places is not meant to reform or punish. It is designed to suppress, isolate, and ultimately erase. Cells without light, dimensions subtly distorted by warp-nullifying runes, corridors that loop into themselves, engineered to destabilize the prisoner's sense of time and direction. Floors layered with inert psychic matter, mined at unspeakable cost from the Black Ship's vaults. Doors that respond not to keys, but to genetic markers and psionic commands. These are not just cells. They are metaphysical oubliettes. In many of these prisons, inmates never see their captors. Nutrient paste is delivered by servo skulls or through chutes in the wall. Air is recycled through sacred filtration systems inscribed with litanies of containment. Monitoring is constant and unseen. Some cells have not been opened in centuries. The technology simply maintains the prisoner in stasis, ensuring they remain alive and trapped. For some, there is no sound. For others, a maddening mechanical hum is the only company. Time, here, becomes meaningless. A prisoner could believe they have been held for years, when it has only been days. Or centuries may pass in silence, the body aged and frail, but the mind untouched, unable to grasp how long it has endured. One infamous structure, known in whispered apocrypha as the Black Hollow, is believed to be buried beneath the crust of a dead planet whose name has been erased from all cogitator banks. It is said to contain a vault of prisoners who are not allowed to die, sustained by arcane life support machinery and psychoreactive torpor fields. These souls are held not for their crimes, but for the secrets they know, or perhaps for what they might one day remember. To the Inquisition, a potential risk is as dangerous as a proven one. And so the Black Hollow endures, silent, lightless, without a single recorded inmate release in 10,000 years. Even more terrifying are the mobile prisons. Some are retrofitted black ships, their original mission abandoned for darker duties. Others are inquisitorial dreadnoughts, armed not with macro cannons but with containment vaults and psychic dampeners. These vessels drift through the void, unmarked, uncontactable. Sometimes they never return. It is speculated that the Imperium has lost entire mobile prison fleets, either to warp rupture or perhaps something worse. Perhaps even the Inquisition dares not retrieve them, preferring to forget what they once carried. These prison fortresses are also weapons of policy. When a world needs to be reminded of the price of disobedience, the Inquisition does not always burn it. Sometimes it removes key figures silently. Mayors, planetary governors, rebellious commissars. Their sudden absence creates a ripple of fear far greater than any speech or threat could. Rumors bloom like fungal rot. Paranoia festers. And in this fog of dread, the Inquisition achieves control. Nothing about these prisons is accidental. Every sealed vault and unlisted asteroid is a tool, a statement. Knowledge is not freedom. It is a chain, and the Inquisition holds the key. The Ordo Hereticus, the so-called witch hunters of the Inquisition, are perhaps the most intimately feared among the orders. Where the Ordo Malleus battles daemons and the Ordo Xenos confronts alien threats, the Hereticus wages war against the impure among us. Not from beyond the stars or the warp, but within the Imperium itself, within the cities, the temples, the homes. They hunt witches, rogue psychers, deviants, cultists, and blasphemers. But their true power lies not just in execution, it lies in the ability to imprison. For the Ordo Hereticus, incarceration is not a concession. It is a tool. They do not seek to punish in the traditional sense. Their cells are not for those who have simply broken laws, but for those whose existence threatens the spiritual and social cohesion of the Imperium. You don't have to speak heresy to vanish, you just have to think it, or look like someone who might, or be accused by someone else more pious than you, or simply be unfortunate enough to be born with unstable psychic potential. The Hereticus does not wait for chaos to erupt. They act in the moment suspicion is raised. Their prisons are uniquely tailored to break not only the body, but the soul. In some facilities, scripture is carved into the walls of every cell, not for decoration, but as a tool of spiritual flagellation. The damned are forced to read the words of the Emperor aloud each hour, or be subjected to neural feedback. Others are confined in sensory deprivation tanks, dosed with null pheromones that suppress emotional response, rendering prayer into a mechanical ritual devoid of comfort or hope. For the Hereticus, containment is often eternal. A confessed witch, even one who begs forgiveness, is rarely executed immediately. They are first studied, probed by psi trackers dosed with anti-warp compounds, examined for genetic flaws or taint markers. Many are subjected to arcane liturgical purgations, rituals that combine exorcism, hypnosis, and surgery. Some of these treatments are as ancient as the Imperium itself. Others are experimental, learned from cryptic ecclesiarchal sects, or inherited from radical inquisitors long dead. Few subjects survive these processes. Fewer still remain sane. And yet, for all their cruelty, the Hereticus believes they are saving the Imperium. Their prisons are full of people who, if released, could destabilize entire hive cities, infect populations with mimetic heresy or birth cults simply by their charisma. Even those who never acted, who never once spoke against the ecclesiarchy, are considered too dangerous to risk. They may carry ideas, and in the grimdark future of the 41st millennium, ideas are more dangerous than bullets. Some of the Ordo's darkest vaults are reserved for those who once served the Imperium faithfully, but were found wanting. Battle sisters who displayed psychic phenomena. Confessors who began to question the authenticity of relics. Administratum clerks who uncovered census data that suggested discrepancies in planetary tides and demographic collapse. These are not enemies, they are failures. Failures the Imperium cannot acknowledge, but cannot allow to roam free. They are caged not because they are evil, but because they are inconvenient. There are also the cases of the silent choir, prisoners held for their knowledge of particular heresies. These individuals are forcibly rendered mute through surgical or psychic means and kept in cells lined with anti-sound hexes and new spheric scramblers. Their crime was knowing too much about the truth of certain cults, the existence of secret sects within the Adepta Sororitas, or the inner workings of rogue ecclesiarchal cells. Killing them would be a mercy. But the Ordo Hereticus often prefers to preserve them, living footnotes in the marginalia of forbidden lore. What's most tragic, perhaps, is that the Hereticus does not always destroy those they incarcerate. Some are turned, bent, broken down and rebuilt as tools of the Inquisition. Psychers are drugged into compliance and used as diviners or scrying mediums. Former heretics may be mind-scrubbed, their personalities overwritten, and their bodies repurposed into living batteries for warp interdiction engines. In some rare cases, even witches become witch hunters. Their knowledge, once a crime, becomes a weapon, so long as they remain tightly leashed. The Ordo Hereticus sees prisons not as places of rest or correction, but as bulwarks against the creeping chaos of the human mind. In their view, every unsanctioned thought is a lit fuse. Every whispered doubt is a plague. Their prison cells are cathedrals of control, altars to obedience where the unclean spirit is not exorcised, but entombed. The Ordo Xenos operates at the far edge of the Imperium's understanding. They are the blade that cuts before diplomacy, the shadow that falls before any first contact. Their mission is not merely to fight Xenos threats, but to study, dissect, and if necessary, annihilate all alien influence. Their prisons, unlike those of the Hereticus or Malleus, are not designed solely for humans. They are containment facilities for the inhuman, the incomprehensible, and the grotesquely alien. And within these vaults lie secrets so dangerous they could destabilize the entire Imperium if exposed. The Ordo Xenos maintains facilities that defy all biological logic. A prison designed for a tyrannid specimen might be a gravity-warped vacuum tank filled with nutrient gas and sealed with polymorphic gene lattices. A Necron tomb spawn might be bound within a field of suspended temporal stasis, with time itself fragmented around its prison, creating an echo loop of endless reawakening and recontaining. Eldar warlocks, if ever captured, are secured in anti-psychic toroids crafted with repurposed webway technology, stolen at terrible cost. These are not cells, they are containment miracles, built by blending Mechanicus Herotech with forbidden Xenos science, maintained under strictest quarantine. But the most disturbing aspect of these prisons is not the prisoners, it is the humans who are kept with them. Researchers, interrogators, inquisitorial savants whose minds are bent toward deciphering alien culture, language, and weaponry. These individuals are often housed in adjacent vaults, sometimes in direct psychic proximity to the very beings they are studying. Over time, the boundaries blur. There are recorded cases, heavily redacted, of human linguists developing telepathic rapport with Tau prisoners, of cultural anthropologists dreaming in Eldar symbology, or of tech priests who began to adopt Necron logic structures into their own cognition. Such individuals are rarely allowed to live long after their research ends. In this way, the Ordo Xenos prisons become both containment chambers and crucibles of quiet heresy. The line between understanding and becoming is perilously thin. And yet the Inquisition persists, for knowledge is power, and in the case of Xenos threats, ignorance is death. Every captured creature offers insights into unknown technologies, alien psychology, or potential weaknesses. Every prison becomes a living codex, its walls stained with sacrifice. Some prisoners are not so much captured as preserved. Xenos corpses, if rare or biologically unstable, are cryo-sealed in vaults layered with stasis fields. These bodies are studied intermittently, dissected and reassembled by rotating teams of adepts, their tissues analyzed for residual psychic patterns or gene-encoded messages. In certain facilities, living alien brains are kept in isolation, nourished by synthetic blood and bombarded with neural queries designed to simulate communication. These brains do not scream, they hum, they dream, and sometimes they answer back. Then there are the human prisoners, those who dealt too closely with the alien. Rogue traders who trafficked in forbidden goods, explorators who went too deep into ancient ruins, scholars who interpreted alien scripture. In the eyes of the Ordo Xenos, these individuals are liabilities. Their minds are potential weapons, sharpened by exposure to the unknown. Execution is often considered too wasteful. Instead, they are imprisoned, questioned endlessly, and in some cases forced to teach, providing context for alien behavior, tactics, or culture. The irony is profound. Heresy becomes curriculum. Of particular note are the emulated, humans who began to mimic Xenos' behavior after prolonged exposure. Some adopt Tau philosophy and begin speaking in terms of the greater good. Others are fascinated by Eldar craftworld logic or Orc instinctual hierarchies. A few even begin modifying their bodies, grafting chitinous armor, adorning themselves with pseudo-wraithbone, or altering brainwave patterns through ritualized electrotherapy. These individuals are usually declared excommunicate traitorous and executed. But sometimes they are simply hidden, their existence denied. Their bodies stored in unnamed vaults under layers of sigils and shame. There are even darker rumors of facilities where Xenos prisoners and human captives are kept together, not for punishment or observation, to see what develops. These rumors suggest that some inquisitors believe that certain hybridizations, cultural, psychic, even genetic, may yield new tools for the Imperium. If true, these prisons are not just illegal, they are monstrous. But such is the shadowed logic of the Ordo Xenos. To understand the alien, they must become capable of thinking like one. And that process begins with silence, isolation, and the terrible intimacy of shared captivity. In these cells, humanity does not merely imprison the Xenos. It stares into the mirror of its own evolution and wonders what it must become to survive. The black ships are the great ghost vessels of the Imperium, massive, silent, and dreaded wherever they appear. Crewless in the eyes of the common man, operated by hooded figures and mechanical savants, they arrive not with hope or banners, but with sorrow and inevitability. Their purpose is singular: to collect psychers. Every year, from every world under the Emperor's light, they gather those marked by the warp, from terrified children to broken elders. And while most assume these psychers are taken to Holy Terra to be sacrificed, many do not make it that far. Some are kept, some are stored, some are imprisoned forever. The journey aboard the black ships is often the first and final taste of freedom these psychers ever know. Drugged into compliance, blindfolded or gagged, stripped of name and identity, they are processed like material, not people. For the vast majority, their destination is the Emperor's golden throne, a final act of purpose, a last, searing gift to sustain his divine presence. But this is not mercy. It is death by incineration of the soul. Yet those deemed too dangerous, too unstable, or too valuable are diverted. They are not sacrificed, they are stored. The psychic dungeons of the Inquisition are unlike any other prison. These are not simply dark rooms or reinforced cells. They are metaphysical prisons, constructed as much through techno-theological ritual as with stone and steel. Null fields hum in every corridor. Wards are inscribed with painstaking accuracy, each glyph blessed 100 times. No surface is reflective, no edge is sharp, no window opens onto the stars. Everything is calculated to reduce stimuli, to cut off escape routes, not just of body but of mind and soul. Some psychers are contained because they are oracles. Their minds open to the tides of fate, too valuable to destroy. These sequestered seers are kept in deep stasis, thawed only when their particular vision is needed. Others are kept alive because they have touched the minds of demons and survived. Their knowledge is priceless and damning. They are interrogated not for hours, but decades. Their identities are stripped and reconstructed, their thoughts monitored by psychic dampeners. Some even begin to forget they were human. The most tragic cases are the echoing choirs. Cells filled with psychers whose powers have been linked through forced harmonization. Bound together in a perpetual loop, they amplify each other's psychic resonance while being used to scan for warp breaches, demonic outbreaks, or unsanctioned activity across sectors. These prisoners scream in perfect harmony, dreaming of fire and blood. They are not even aware they are imprisoned. Their entire lives become a psionic machine, channeled through pain. Then there are the psychers too powerful to be used, too unstable to be destroyed. These are interred in null tombs, massive sarcophagi of black stone and psychic null matter. Some of these entities are no longer recognizable as human. Some may be proto-astropaths who burned out mid-training, their minds half-wedged in the immaterium. Others are latent alpha levels whose awakening was catastrophic. The Inquisition dares not kill them, for fear of releasing a blast of warp energy, so they are buried alive, in thoughtless silence. Not all psyker prisoners are evil. Many were just born wrong. A child who dreamt too vividly, a scholar who heard whispers from the stars, a mother who foresaw her husband's death too clearly. These people are taken without explanation. Their abilities, no matter how minor, mark them as a threat to the balance of reality. Their punishment is not death. It is nullity. To exist in a space designed to unmake identity, to cancel presence, to erase meaning. A prison of unbeing. The Inquisition justifies all this with a singular creed, that the survival of mankind outweighs the suffering of the individual. And to be fair, they may be right. A single rogue psyker can level cities, summon horrors, or fracture the veil between real space and the warp. Yet one cannot help but wonder, what is lost when we treat potential as guilt? When the future of a child is written not in promise, but in fear. The black ships continue their harvest, and behind them, in silent moons and null fortresses, the psychers wait, some dreaming, some screaming, all forgotten. Not all who are taken by the Inquisition are meant to die, and some are not even meant to suffer. Some are meant to wait. Wait for knowledge to become relevant again. Wait for someone to want what they know. Wait until their existence serves a purpose greater than their silence. These are the living dead of the Imperium, Prisoners who are not purged, not broken, but preserved. They live not in freedom, but in suspense. The Inquisition holds them as living footnotes to a past the Imperium is not ready to confront. These prisoners occupy a strange status within the inquisitorial machinery. They are not forgotten. On the contrary, they are often visited regularly, fed properly, and kept in functional if austere accommodations. They are rarely tortured or interrogated beyond the occasional probing, but they are never released. Their existence is a sealed loop, an eternal present. To free them would be to admit that they were never a threat. To kill them would be to destroy a potentially valuable resource, and so they persist. One such category consists of political prisoners, former governors, rogue nobles, discredited cardinals. These individuals are often too well connected to be executed outright. Their families would ask questions. Their death would create ripples. Instead, they are sequestered in remote vaults, their communications cut, their titles stripped. Sometimes they are allowed to read. Occasionally, they are allowed to speak, to a servitor, to a void monk, or to an interrogator who records every word without emotion. Their crime, if any, was being dangerous in the wrong direction, raising doubts, fostering reform, seeing too clearly. Another class of inmate are the holdovers, those captured by one inquisitor whose successors no longer know what to do with them. Sometimes these prisoners outlive the politics of their own arrest. Their captors die, their dossiers are misplaced, their crimes, once urgent, become irrelevant, yet no one dares to free them. The cost of a mistake is too high, and so they remain entombed by bureaucracy and fear. Then there are the informants. These are among the strangest prisoners, spies, seers, and collaborators who gave the Inquisition vital intelligence, often at great personal risk. They were promised protection, not freedom. They are kept alive to validate past claims, to cross-reference future operations, or to serve as insurance against their former associates. Some are cared for meticulously. Others are kept drugged and sedated to prevent memory degradation. In both cases, their usefulness is their curse. Perhaps the most tragic of the long-term prisoners are the loved ones, spouses, siblings, or children of those the Inquisition has taken. These people are often not guilty of anything beyond proximity. They are not tortured, nor are they abused. But they are held indefinitely as leverage or to ensure silence. To release them would risk vengeance or indiscretion. To kill them would violate even the Inquisition's own skewed sense of proportionality. And so they wait, often unaware of why, abandoned in gilded cages. Some of these long-term prisoners begin to mythologize their own captivity. With time, they construct elaborate mental narratives, that they are being tested, that they will be released when a prophecy is fulfilled, that they are vital to a plan greater than themselves. The Inquisition neither confirms nor denies such beliefs. If delusion sustains them, so be it. Others fall into philosophical despair, losing their sense of self in the vast inertia of time. A few adapt. They become scholars, theologians, even poets, producing works of haunting clarity, read only by their captors. There are facilities designed specifically for this kind of prisoner. Stasis cloisters, where time is slowed to a crawl and the inmate ages at a fraction of the normal rate. Memory gardens, where amnesia is chemically induced and managed, allowing the subject to exist in a state of perpetual novelty, unaware of their own imprisonment. And then there are the listening walls, containment cells where prisoners are encouraged to talk continuously, their monologues recorded and sifted for value. These cells are eerily silent save for one voice, echoing endlessly, desperate to matter. Why keep such people alive? Because the Imperium is a place where knowledge is both dangerous and precious. A single memory, a half-forgotten ritual, a facial recognition, or a buried secret could save billions. The Inquisition hoards such assets like a dragon hoards gold, not because they are loved, but because one day they might be needed. And when that day comes, the cell will open, not with apology or thanks, but with cold necessity. And the prisoner, dazed and forgotten, will be led out into a galaxy that moved on without them and asked to serve one last time. Torture, within the sanctums of the Inquisition, is not a crude act of vengeance or rage. It is a doctrine, a calculated discipline, and in the most chilling sense, a sacrament. For the Inquisition does not simply seek to hurt the body, it seeks to disassemble the soul. Pain becomes a dialect, suffering, a scripture. Each interrogation chamber is a cathedral of controlled agony, and each tormentor a priest of unmaking. The methods used are not merely physical. Yes, there are racks and flensing hooks, sanctified branding irons and electropain matrices, but these are basic tools. The real art lies in the fusion of the mechanical, the psychic, and the spiritual. Inquisitorial interrogators are trained not just in anatomy, but in theology and psychodramatics. They know the precise pressure point at which a confession becomes malleable. They understand the spiritual breaking point when a heretic begins to doubt their own sins and starts inventing others simply to escape the void. Pain, to the Inquisition, is not a means to extract truth. It is the crucible through which a new truth is forged. The idea that confessions must be factual is irrelevant. A confession need not be correct. It need only be useful. Many prisoners are broken down until they will say anything. And then they are made to say the right thing. This is not a failure of justice. It is its perfection, because in the eyes of the Inquisition, the crime is proven by the outcome, obedience, or obliteration. Some techniques are esoteric to the point of metaphysical violation. Psychic flagellation, in which pain is induced not on the body but on memories. A mother feels the death of her children again and again, children who are alive and well. A priest re-experiences the loss of his faith, multiplied, looped, degraded into parody. There are pain resonance devices that trap the subject in a single moment of agony, stretching seconds into lifetimes. Some machines whisper prayers while they wound, indoctrinating with every lash. But it is not always violence. There are rooms where prisoners are kept in absolute silence for years, until even the sound of their own heartbeat becomes alien. Others are subjected to endless interrogation without question. Only the expectation of an answer delivered through soundless servitors. This erosion of context causes some to break faster than any torture device. To be punished for a crime you do not know is to confront the possibility that guilt is intrinsic, that existence itself is the offense. The Inquisition also employs confessional cross-examinations. Multiple prisoners are interrogated simultaneously in connected chambers, their answers compared in real time by machine logic engines. Confessions are not taken at face value. They are triangulated, refined, sculpted. A falsehood is not punished. It is corrected, then repeated, then accepted as canon. And some prisoners are not questioned for truth at all. They are interrogated to extract belief. These subjects are often former cultists or rogue scholars whose worldviews must be burned out and replaced. This is a theological torture. Scripture is read aloud during punishment, hymns played backward while pain is administered in rhythmic precision. The goal is not to uncover facts, but to rebuild the mind in the image of imperial truth. When the subject finally cries out that the emperor is merciful, even as they are flayed, their captors know the process is complete. Of particular cruelty are the echo cells, where prisoners are forced to listen to the screams of others, sometimes their own, recorded and remixed. These loops serve as reminders of past pain and warnings of future torment. There are facilities where entire interrogation sessions are recorded in psychic residue and played back into the subject's dreams. The mind becomes the prison. Sleep becomes punishment. Yet despite all this, the Inquisition does not view itself as monstrous. To them, this suffering is righteous. It is the fire that cauterizes the wound, the hammer that shapes the flawed blade. Each broken prisoner is a potential weapon, a piece of intelligence, a cautionary tale. And if they die in the process, then their pain has bought security for 1 billion souls. The interrogators of the Inquisition do not seek to understand their prisoners. They seek to end the need to understand, to reduce complexity into submission, to transmute terror into clarity. The truth is what remains after all resistance has been flayed away. There is silence, and then there is the silence of a null zone, a place where reality itself seems offended by your presence. In these silent cells, constructed for the most dangerous or unstable prisoners, not only is escape impossible, so is existence as you once understood it. These are the domains of pariahs and anti-psychers, wards against the warp pits of pure negation. If a soul can be crushed without a finger lifted, it happens here. The technology used in null zones is among the most sacred and secret in the Imperium. Cells are lined with psychically inert blackstone, blessed 1,000 times, worded with sigils in forgotten dialects of High Gothic. Every inch is engineered not to contain the body, but to sever the connection to the warp, to cut off thought from its own echo. Psychers held in these cells quickly collapse into madness, not from torment, but from the sheer vacuum of perception. They cannot feel the warp, and for them, that is akin to being flayed alive from the inside out. But even non-psychers suffer in null zones. Emotions flatten, memories fade, speech slows and becomes difficult. Faith becomes a memory instead of a fire. A prisoner may sit in a null cell for weeks before realizing that their dreams have stopped, that they no longer pray, that they can no longer remember the face of their mother or the sound of their own voice. These are not just cells, they are spiritual oubliettes designed to erode the essence of what makes a person human. Some cells go further. Advanced nullification units use implanted pariah technology, often sourced from the rare and reviled untouchables, humans born without a soul, whose very presence disrupts psychic energy. These pariahs are installed in adjacent chambers, sometimes grown as vat-grown clones, other times kept sedated and leashed like hounds. Their proximity ensures the constant suppression of psychic potential. Prisoners held in such environments do not scream. They simply fall silent, as if their voices have forgotten how to rise. There are whispered tales of echo inversion cells, where the prisoner's own psychic signature is fed back into their mind in reverse. These cells are used not to contain power, but to reflect it, twist it, poison it. In one such recorded case, a captured Alpha-class psyker reportedly collapsed into a vegetative state after a mere 3 hours of exposure. What he saw or heard was never known. He never spoke again. The psychological damage caused by prolonged exposure to null zones is profound and irreversible. Prisoners often emerge not defiant or broken, but hollow. There is no resistance because there is no person left to resist. This too is by design. The Inquisition does not need its enemies dead. It needs them still, obedient, drained of defiance, and perhaps most importantly, silent. Not all null zones are artificial. Some are places where reality has fractured so completely that the warp itself recoils. Old battlefields where Culexus assassins once walked, starship wrecks fused with anti-psionic warheads, crypts built around slivers of dead gods. The Inquisition maps these places meticulously, claiming them as natural prisons. If a psyker must be entombed, better to bury them in a place where even demons dare not tread. The staff who maintain these cells are no less peculiar. Many are pariahs themselves, trained as wardens from birth. Others are former psychers whose powers were surgically removed, left numb to everything, trusted precisely because they can no longer feel. These wardens are as much part of the prison as the walls themselves. They do not speak often. They do not smile, and their loyalty is absolute. Not because they believe, but because they no longer believe in anything at all. The null cell is the antithesis of hope. There is no firelight at the end of this tunnel, no redemptive arc, no grand finale. It is where faith withers, where purpose dissolves. And for some, it is not even a punishment, it is a mercy, because what lies beyond the walls of the Imperium's prisons can be far, far worse. In the end, null zones are a perfect symbol of the Inquisition's logic. Better to extinguish potential than risk catastrophe. Better silence than madness. Better nothing than something uncontrollable. In these cells, the warp is absent, and with it, all meaning. It is one thing for a person to vanish. It is quite another for a city to go silent, a starport to be cordoned off without explanation, a continent to be declared quarantined with no survivors allowed to speak. In the darkest archives of the Inquisition, there are records, shrouded in ciphers and psychic encryption, of events where entire populations, even worlds, have disappeared. Not by extermination, not by war, but by silence. These are the vanished worlds, places that still technically exist, still orbit their suns, still rotate under the light of the Astronomicon, but whose people are gone. The most infamous of these are subject to full memetic blackout. Even the names of these planets are lost, replaced with alphanumeric designations, their coordinates scrubbed from the records of the Novus Nobilit. When they are remembered at all, it is only by those who watched them go dark and lived, barely, to tell the tale. There are several reasons why such extreme measures are taken. One is memetic contamination, ideologies, psychic phenomena, or heretical beliefs that spread like plagues through populations faster than any cure. Entire hive cities have fallen to belief viruses that began as whispers and ended in psychic incantation. When a whole people begins to think the same blasphemy, when their collective unconscious begins to reshape the warp around them, the Inquisition acts without hesitation. The people are not killed, they are vanished. Taken in the night, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, shipped off or buried beneath chemical clouds. Sometimes, the city is left standing, eerily quiet, inhabited only by silence and the drifting prayers of the Mechanicus. Then there is xenogenesis, the contamination of human populations by alien DNA, culture, or ideology. There have been cases where Tau envoys successfully infiltrated entire frontier worlds, reshaping their governments and belief structures before the Imperium realized. By the time the Inquisition arrived, the infection was not physical, it was political. Rather than wage war and risk ideological spread, the Ordo Xenos sealed the system, erased all communications, and removed those responsible through targeted population extraction. The rest were either sterilized or redacted. One world, once known for its stellar shipwrights, now exists only as an asteroid field in a no-fly zone. And then there is psychic escalation, the exponential proliferation of uncontrolled psychers, often resulting from warp storms or tainted black ship mismanagement. In these cases, entire settlements begin to produce psychers in massive numbers. Children born screaming with warp fire in their eyes. Elders mumbling prophecies in voices not their own. These outbreaks are not always demonic in origin, they can simply be the result of psychic saturation. But the risk is too great. Entire provinces are removed from reality, using planetary-scale null fields or vortex implosion devices. The survivors, if any, are imprisoned in inquisitorial bastions and never see starlight again. One haunting example is the tale of Saran Prime, a world once home to over 9 billion souls. After a failed experiment involving a recovered Necron data core, the entire population began to dream in binary, a single, planetary dream, identical across all minds. The Mechanicus panicked, the Inquisition responded. All orbital access was denied. Within a week, Saran Prime was listed as lost to warp anomaly. No such anomaly was ever recorded. But the dream has never been forgotten. Echoes of it still surface in astropathic nightmares across Segmentum Obscurus. Vanished populations are not always victims of corruption. Sometimes they are simply witnesses. An explorer fleet stumbles upon a pre-imperial artifact too dangerous to understand. The archaeologists who uncovered it are removed, their families, colleagues, even the workers who delivered their food are deemed at risk. The planet is sealed. The Inquisition assigns a watch station to observe the ruin. No explanation is ever given. In 10,000 years, the site becomes a myth, then a warning, then nothing at all. Even more horrifying are the whispers of preemptive vanishings, cases where the Inquisition acts before any sign of heresy or corruption is evident. These are believed to be based on esoteric astropathic forecasts, temporal irregularities, or forbidden prophecies glimpsed in the Emperor's Tarot. A world is deemed inevitable, and so it is removed, not because of what it has done, but because of what it might do. These operations are called ghost mandates, and they are so secret that even most inquisitors deny their existence. In all these cases, the logic is the same. The needs of the many outweigh the lives of the few. But when the few becomes a planet, or a civilization, or a culture, what does that say about the value of human life in the Imperium? And more chillingly, how many of these vanished worlds were innocent? We will never know, because that is the point. Most inquisitors operate within a framework of grim necessity. They act with ruthless discretion, guided by doctrine and the desperate logic of survival. But not all of them stay within the lines. There are those among their ranks who twist the authority of the Rosette into something monstrous, something personal. These are the Inquisitors who break the rules, not by accident, but by design. And their prisons are unlike any others in the Imperium. Such rogue Inquisitors begin with conviction. They see flaws in the system, gaps in protocol, weaknesses in oversight, and take it upon themselves to correct them. But conviction, in the warped crucible of the Inquisition, can become obsession. Some grow enamored with a particular enemy, a cult they cannot destroy, a heresy that haunts their dreams. Others become fixated on a theory, a heretical cosmology, a vision of the warp that no longer aligns with sanctioned truth. And then there are those who simply drift quietly into a madness made all the more dangerous by their absolute authority. These inquisitors establish their own prisons, hidden chambers on backwater worlds, asteroids redirected from standard orbits, decommissioned voidcraft refitted as floating oubliettes. No oversight, no audits. The inmates of these facilities often have no idea who captured them. Their interrogators wear masks, their confessions are not logged, their punishments are not proportional. They are symbolic. A mathematician might be tortured not for heresy, but for proposing a geometry the Inquisitor finds suspiciously alien. A priest may be entombed for failing to respond to a dream the Inquisitor believed was a prophecy. Within these secret prisons, new forms of cruelty emerge. There is the mirror cell, in which the prisoner is surrounded by clones or surgically altered doubles who repeat their own crimes, forcing the subject to watch themselves again and again. There are continuity labs, where prisoners are tortured in simulated loops, each session slightly different, testing variables like belief resilience, memory decay, or moral recalibration. These facilities are not merely containment sites, they are experiments. The prisoners are hypotheses. Some rogue inquisitors turn their prisons into cults. Guards begin to refer to the Inquisitor in reverent tones. Prisoners are arranged into hierarchies of punishment, with more compliant inmates tormenting the newly arrived. Doctrine becomes fluid. Reality itself becomes warped by years of psychic feedback, ritual, and emotional degradation. These places become shrines to the ego of their architects, cathedrals of controlled blasphemy masquerading as justice. But not all these rogue prisons are sadistic. Some are built from guilt. There are inquisitors who, after years of sanctioned slaughter, begin to doubt. They take prisoners not to torment them, but to protect them from the Imperium itself. They forge sanctuaries, disguised as prison blocks, where mutants, psychers, and ideological outliers are hidden. These inquisitors are traitors in every sense, compassionate in a universe where compassion is suicide. Their prisons are filled not with screams, but with the quiet tragedy of hope. These facilities rarely last long. When discovered, they are eradicated utterly, and the inquisitors who built them are erased from record. Even among sanctioned peers, whispers circulate about these breakaway agents. They are not officially condemned, at least not always. To acknowledge their existence would be to acknowledge the fallibility of the Inquisition. Instead, they are reassigned, sent on suicidal missions, subjected to internal investigation that never ends. Their prisons are left to rot, still holding souls whose jailers are long dead. The Ordo Hereticus has a classification for such facilities: rogue vaults. When discovered, these sites are approached with extreme caution. Not only are they likely to contain the dangerously unstable or the unjustly imprisoned, they also carry the psychic residue of obsession. These vaults do not simply hold prisoners. They hold ideology gone rancid, frozen in ferrocrete. Some inquisitors who discover such places are tempted to continue the work. Others are broken by what they find. There is a particular cruelty in knowing that even within an institution as uncompromising as the Inquisition, there are those who go too far. That in a galaxy of sanctioned brutality, there still exists a line that can be crossed. And behind that line are prisons built not to protect humanity, but to feed the vanity, fear, or longing of those who once swore to defend it. These are the dungeons the Inquisition itself pretends do not exist. And that silence, the silence of a system too terrified to see its own reflection, is perhaps the darkest prison of all. To vanish is to be erased. Not killed, not defeated, but unmade. This is the fate of countless souls taken by the Inquisition. Not through violence or warfare, but through silence. A silence so total, so deliberate, that it folds their existence into myth, then into rumor, then into nothing at all. They are not martyrs, nor victims. They are the disappeared. What happens in the Inquisition's secret prisons is not just a series of brutal acts or unending incarcerations. It is a philosophical statement, a declaration that the Imperium will do anything to survive, that humanity is worth more than any single human, that truth is too fragile to be entrusted to the masses, and that the only answer to corruption is containment, forever. Imagine a life that no longer exists in memory, data, or emotion. No shrine, no record, no mourning, your name not cursed nor praised but simply deleted. In a galaxy where every citizen is a cog in the great machine of survival, this is the worst fate, to be considered unnecessary, but too dangerous to be discarded. And so you are sealed, in steel and silence, for eternity. Some of these prisoners do not go gently. Their minds persist, muttering in the dark. Some fight with words, others with silence. A few are so warped by time and trauma that they become something new, no longer prisoners, but symbols. Symbols of what happens when the Imperium decides your existence is more dangerous than your death. But the greatest cruelty is that for most, there is no transformation. No final moment of rebellion. Just the slow erosion of memory, of thought, of identity, until they are not even sure what they did, or if they did anything at all. This is not a flaw in the system. It is the system. The Inquisition was never designed to be fair. It was designed to be final. And yet, some small part of us still wonders, what if even one of them was innocent? What if some of those sealed behind null wards and psychic tombs were simply in the wrong place, at the wrong time, with the wrong thought? Would that change anything? Would that warrant their release? In the logic of the Imperium, the answer is simple: it doesn't matter. The Imperium cannot afford doubt. It cannot afford nuance. It cannot afford mercy, because it stands on a knife's edge, and even the whisper of uncertainty is enough to tip it into chaos. So it must be absolute, unquestioning, ruthless. And those who fall outside that mandate must disappear, without question, without evidence, without end. And yet in that darkness, there is a kind of sacred terror, a reminder that the Emperor's light does not reach everywhere. That some places, some people, are sacrificed not just for safety, but for silence. They are not remembered, but they are necessary. In the end, that is the final truth of the Inquisition's secret prisons. They are not dungeons. They are not punishments. They are not places. They are decisions. Decisions made in the dark, for a future that can never say thank you, and will never know the cost. And perhaps as we look across the stars and whisper praises to the Emperor, we should pause, not in guilt, not in pity, but in fear. Fear of becoming one of the disappeared. Fear of being deemed necessary to forget, because in the Imperium of man to vanish is to serve. Forever. There is a toll, a terrible toll, exacted not just upon the prisoners, but upon the jailers. The Inquisition is not a shield, it is a wound that never closes. To hold power over life and death, over memory and identity, over truth itself, is to dance upon a blade sharpened by the screams of the silenced. And no Inquisitor escapes uncut. They begin with purpose, fire in the soul. They believe in mankind, in its survival, in the Emperor's vision. But every act of containment, every erased life, every prison built in silence chips away at that belief. Doubt is not permitted in the Inquisition, but it grows, rootless and silent, fed by the very horrors they are meant to prevent. For some, the process is slow, a weariness that seeps into the bones, missions blur, files multiply. The faces of the condemned blend together. They tell themselves it is righteous, that every cell filled is a world saved. But behind their eyes something hollows. They begin to forget birthdays, names, the warmth of sunlight. They speak in High Gothic even when no one is listening. They sleep in rooms with sealed doors and triple-blessed wards. They wake with their bolt pistol already drawn. Others fall faster. They see one too many demons, one too many innocents, screaming as they're dragged away. They start to question, did that child really show signs of psychic resonance? Was that astropath hallucinating, or just afraid? Was the rogue scholar truly corrupted, or just curious? The questions gnaw. They cannot ask them aloud, for to doubt is to court treason. And so they speak to themselves, or worse, to the prisoners. There is a known phenomenon among the Inquisition called echo drift. It begins when inquisitors begin visiting the same prisoners repeatedly. They claim it's for further questioning or personal assessment. But the truth is simpler. They are haunted. Not by guilt, but by recognition. The face in the cell reminds them of someone, or themselves. They begin to see not threats, but people, and that is how it starts. Inquisitors who fall into echo drift often begin altering their methods. They skip torture. They allow prisoners books. They listen instead of interrogating. Some stop making arrests altogether, instead monitoring threats that should have been contained. These are the ones who eventually vanish from inquisitorial records. Not because they are hunted, because they erase themselves. Worse are the ones who do not break, but bend. These inquisitors embrace the logic of the prison too completely. They lose the ability to see humans as anything but risks. Every conversation becomes an evaluation, every friendship a liability. Their staff begin to disappear. First a scribe, then a senescal, then entire teams. Their fortresses become mausoleums. These inquisitors live in silence by choice. They trust no one, speak to no one. Their eyes are always scanning, always analyzing, until even their own reflection becomes a potential threat. The Ordo Malleus speaks of a condition called purity's spiral. It is a mental collapse in which the inquisitor becomes obsessed with personal corruption, constantly purging their own thoughts, rewriting their journals, scouring their memories for taint. They undergo ritual mind scrubs weekly. They refuse food unless it is sanctified. They sleep under null fields. Some even submit themselves for partial lobotomization, fearing that any lapse in vigilance could doom mankind. These inquisitors do not die. They are preserved, imprisoned in their own bunkers, tended to by servitors, repeating litanies until their voices fail. Then there are those who go further still. They begin to believe that no one can be trusted to hold such power. Not the ecclesiarchy, not the high lords, not even the Inquisition. And so they begin to purge, not the enemies of mankind, but its protectors. They build prisons not for cultists or psychers, but for cardinals, generals, rival inquisitors. They see themselves as the last line of defense against an imperium that has already fallen. These are not rogue inquisitors. They are zealots burned into the shape of paranoia. Their vaults hold secrets the galaxy will never see again. The psychological damage of such service is rarely recorded. The Inquisition does not write of weakness, but in the deepest libraries of Ordo Sicarius there are black-bound tomes, anonymous accounts, decrypted logs, fractured memoirs. They speak of inquisitors who began to hear the voices of their prisoners echo in their minds, of those who became convinced that their own interrogations were fabrications implanted to break them, of those who begged to be sealed in their own cells to stop the spread of madness they believed was themselves. And perhaps that is the final truth of these prisons, that they do not merely break those inside. They echo outward, infecting the jailers, transforming guardians into watchers, watchers into mourners, mourners into monsters. Each prison is not just a location, it is a wound in reality, bleeding sanity into the void. The Inquisition endures, but no one who walks its corridors remains whole. Not every prisoner is forgotten. Some are remembered, not out of compassion, but utility. In a galaxy on the brink of collapse, even the most dangerous heretic, mutant, or psyker may still have value. The Inquisition, in its boundless pragmatism, does not waste potential lightly. Within the secret prisons of the Imperium, there are those whose lives are extended not for mercy, but for use. These individuals are not prisoners in the conventional sense. They are resources. Their cells are not cages, they are storage units, cryostasis chambers, warp-dampened oubliettes, or chemically pacified tanks that keep the mind intact while the body decays. The Inquisition maintains vast archives of these beings, categorized not by crime, but by potential application. There are scholars whose heretical insights into xenotechnology make them irreplaceable. Kept just on the edge of death, they are occasionally reawakened when their specific knowledge becomes relevant. Their reward for usefulness is not freedom, but slightly less sedation. They are denied speech, gesture, often even light. Information is drawn through mind probes and neurosympathetic interfaces. They are living data cores, screaming libraries, whose only crime was seeing too much and understanding it. Then there are the psychers, the ones too dangerous to unleash and too powerful to destroy. They are not just imprisoned, they are integrated into the Inquisition's infrastructure. Some are wired directly into planetary defense grids, their precognition leveraged to anticipate orbital incursions or daemonic incursions. Others are used in Black Mirror arrays, where their tortured dreams are filtered into predictive simulations that guide inquisitorial campaigns. These prisoners exist in perpetual agony, their souls mined like ore, refined into guidance. There are mutants whose physiologies have been shaped by exposure to warp anomalies, genestealer infestations, or unknowable xenos parasites. These beings are not studied, they are bred. The Inquisition conducts controlled reproduction in sterile, mechanized chambers using gene-editing magos and heretic vivisectionists. The offspring are terminated or weaponized, depending on their results, and all the while, the original specimens remain chained, aware of every birth and every death. Worst of all are the behavioral subjects. These are the prisoners used in moral simulations. The Inquisition doesn't simply fight enemies, it studies them. What makes a heretic betray their cell? What pressure causes a cult to collapse? In massive underground chambers, mock societies are created, cells filled with manipulated prisoners, each unaware of the simulation's artificiality. Over months or years, their behaviors are observed. Do they form religions, revolt, submit? These behavioral maps are fed into wider imperial control systems, allowing governors, commissars, and even Space Marine chapters to refine their tactics of domination. It is a truth few within the Imperium wish to admit. The Inquisition does not destroy its enemies. It repurposes them. The logic is inescapable. If a daemon host can be controlled, it becomes a weapon. If a chaos-touch prophet's visions can be filtered, they become intelligence. If a xenolinguist can translate an alien dialect before madness takes them, they are useful. Every whisper in the dark becomes a potential tool. If the chain is strong enough, if the cell is deep enough. But these strategies are not without cost. Many inquisitors who begin such programs believe they are being practical, noble even, that they are saving lives. But over time, the boundary between necessity and cruelty collapses. They stop seeing their subjects as people, and once that happens, the line between prisoner and product is not just crossed, it is erased. Some prisoners resist, even in these conditions. There are cases where psychers have deliberately corrupted the systems they were bound to, causing entire orbital stations to plunge into warp storms. There are reports of behavioral experiments where the subjects discovered the illusion of their world and staged full-scale uprisings, escaping not the prison, but understanding and tearing their overseers apart in the process. One such uprising reportedly led to an entire inquisitorial bastion being sealed and classified as incompatible with reality. No personnel were ever recovered. Yet these failures are the exception. Most of the time, the system works. The prisoners suffer. The Imperium profits. 1 billion lives are saved by the pain of one. And if that one screams in the dark for 100 years never knowing why, it is a small price to pay. This is not mercy. It is not justice. It is efficiency. The cold calculus of survival in a universe that demands ever greater sacrifices. Every prison cell is a vault of potential, every cry a data point, every broken mind a weapon waiting to be repurposed. The Inquisition does not waste what it can use, even if what it uses was once a soul. If you found this journey into the darkest corners of the Imperium compelling and want more lore-drenched explorations of Warhammer 40k's hidden truths, subscribe to the channel. The galaxy is vast, and its horrors are endless. Let's explore them together.